Welcome to Foundations. A few of our regulars are missing, but we've been bolstered by some additions from the hub coming in, so I'm looking forward to having a full packed room once we have our regulars back, or all the regulars back. But welcome to Foundations. Normally I have it up here, so I went to go point at it, but it's not there this evening. 3 different times people said, "Hi Nate," and I said, "Good morning." Because when I'm talking to people in the church, it's in the morning. Okay, so what we're going to do here, since we have a decent chunk of people who haven't been here ever or haven't been here often, we're going to kind of take a step back and do a little bit of our philosophy of the class and philosophy of really Christian learning, Christians and studying the Bible and so on and so forth. Before we kind of do some recapping, we had technically a 3-week break. 2 weeks in a row we had to cancel for a couple of different reasons. But we're back, and we've been studying the book of Galatians. So I'll catch you guys, those of you who are new, back up, and we'll do some recapping. But I'm going to start with a couple questions here to get some discussion going. As Christians, do you think that we should be reading the Bible regularly?
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay. So we take the word reading, and sure, the Christian should read the Bible. What about studying?
Yeah.
Should the Christian be studying the Bible?
Yes.
Okay, how much?
Every day.
And there's no uniform, like, you should all be in the same opinion here. I'm just collecting opinions here. Every day,
As often as you can.
As often as
long it
possible,
takes you to
okay.
digest the material.
sure. Okay. What about this? You take the idea of something being reasonable, being able to reason out a thing or a concept or a thought process or whatever. When you look at Christianity, faith, relationship with God, this massive worldwide movement called Christianity, do you believe, your personal opinion, that it's reasonable?
Yes.
That it can be understood and reasoned out? That there's not a lot of blurry, confusing areas that people have to gloss over, but you can reason it out and understand it. Is that what you believe, or what would your opinion be there?
I think that I used to think there was a lot of blurry stuff, but when I started, when both of us started, really digging into the Bible and, coming to this class and, learning more about it, actively wanting to learn more about it, became, more clear.
Okay, cool. Because, there's opinions on both sides there. Strong opinions. You'll find people who are very, very convinced that you can and should understand your faith. You can and should understand the Bible. You can and should seek to understand God. But on the other hand, you'll have people who very passionately will say, no, it's not reasonable. You should not aim to understand it. That's not the point. The point is faith is an experience thing and not a brain thing. So you have the brain people and you have the experience people, and who's right and who's wrong.
Can it be both?
Yeah.
Can it be both? Well, that's a good question. We're, as human beings, we really, really like to swing to one side or the other. We are polar creatures. We say, what, you disagree with me? Well, you know what? I'm going to take my opinion and make it extreme. And so now I have 2 extreme different opinions, and nary the two shall meet. That's what we do. If you look at the Great Reformation in Christian history, which I'd love to go into one of these days. But you look at the Catholic Church, they had this bent towards doing works to buy your way into heaven. It became like this. It wasn't like this originally, but it became like this in the first millennium, 1100, 1200, 1300 AD. It was, you go to the bones of the saints and you kiss the bones and you've bought yourself a way into heaven. Or if you sin, you pay a certain amount of money to the church and then you're forgiven. Or if you pay a certain amount of money to the church, the people who that might be in hell now could be ushered into heaven. So it's all about buying your way in or doing something to get your way in. And then you have these people who say, no, that's not right. It's all about faith. It's all about believing in God, and there's no works involved. There's nothing that we can do to earn God's grace. And that's what you have the Protestant Reformation. A guy named Martin Luther really got this thing rolling. And then guys like John Calvin and Ulrich Zwingli and these guys, the Reformation, and it's all about faith and faith alone. So no, there's no works at all, and we shouldn't do anything at all. It's all God chooses who to have grace to, and that's all there is. So is it works or is it faith? Is it works or is it faith? And that's one of the big questions we were looking at in Galatians. Is it all about works or is it all about faith? Can it be both? Can there be a meeting in between? Can there be moderation?
I like moderation.
Man, Who let the pretty girl in? That's my wife. You guys would be like, yeah, I'm getting out of here. Big creep around the show. This is your first time at any of my classes. Ever.
Oh, she gets
Welcome.
Yeah.
Welcome.
So this is what we do as humans. We have a strong tendency to swing to one side or the other. Okay, well, you know what? I don't really like that, and so I'm going to make my view more and more extreme to the point that they're just as far apart as north and south. I almost said north and west, and that would have been silly. So is Christianity reasonable, or is it all about faith? Can you understand it, or should you just experience it? And I think at the very least, starting on one side of the spectrum, whether there is a lot of experience involved or not, when you look at the concept of it being reasonable and being able to be reasoned out and thought out and understood, I think the answer is yes, in my opinion. And I'll give you guys a disclaimer. Everything you're going to hear me say is my opinion. You're going to find people, I guarantee you could find people that anything I would say, they would disagree with it. People who are really smart, people who are not really smart, all kinds of people will be disagreeing with things I say, and that's the case for any opinion you're going to find anywhere in the world. So that's my disclaimer for anything you're going to hear in this class. But in my opinion, yeah, Christianity is a reasonable faith. And my backup for that is the Bible. There's a verse in the book of Isaiah in the Old Testament, right at the beginning, in chapter 1, where God himself says to the people of Israel, he says, you know what? Come, let us reason together. He says, come on, I want to reason with you and show you the error of your ways. I want to take you from point A in your minds to point B to help you understand what your problem is. Come, let us reason together. The word reason, by the way, is the root of the word reasonable. So if you can reason something, it's reasonable. And so if God's trying to reason with us, I think we can reason out the things that he wants us to do. And there's a rationale for his laws and for his directions and for the Bible and for relationship with him. Obviously, this is my opinion, but it's hard to get around a verse like that. The Bible is the end authority on whose opinion is right. And so I believe we can reason Christianity out. And I think most of us here would probably say, yeah, at least to some degree, we can reason Christianity out. And the main reason we can do that is because Christianity is what we would call a revealed faith. What do you think that might mean? Kim has an idea, but she's not speaking.
I'm not giving all the extras. I always get in trouble for that.
A revealed faith. What might have been revealed? Truth. Okay, so truth might have been revealed. So if you say in Christianity, truth has been revealed to us, how? How has truth been revealed to us in a different way from, say, Zoroastrianism?
Jesus dying on the cross.
Jesus dying on the cross. Jesus coming as a human being, certainly. But Kim sat up here and she picked up her Bible and she wiggled it around at me.
Yes.
And I think that's probably a really good place to start.
Yes.
You take the Bible. Because, in other words, God has provided us with the Bible. Clear guidelines. Clear standards. The biggest thing here is there's no guessing involved. If I were to say, I'm going to create a new religion, I think that there's a God named, X. There's a God named X, and I guess he's benevolent, and I guess maybe he wants me to play golf 3 times a week, and do this and that and this, and I'm creating my own religion, my own way of life, but really I'm guessing. I'm blindly going, well, maybe this, and maybe that, and maybe this. Maybe this is what's right. Now, the reason I say Christianity is a revealed faith, that we have the truth, is because we have a Bible in which, so the Bible as a source of truth, but when I say truth, it's back way up here. When I say truth, what do I mean? What is truth? That's a more difficult question than you might imagine, especially in this day and age.
Yeah.
But in your opinion, what is truth?
God's
Word of God.
God's Word. God's Word is truth, but even take the concept of let's get out of Christianity for a second. As impossible as that sounds. Let's take the Christian terminology out. If you were to go up to someone on the street and say, what is truth? If you were to take a philosophy class, what is truth?
Like something that's real?
Reality.
That's a really good answer, I think. Reality. Something that is real. Something that's real. Something that is actually part of reality. Now, this gets really confusing, okay? Because you guys ever heard of the term postmodernism?
Yes.
Postmodernism is a movement that says there is no meta-narrative. A meta-narrative is one truth that applies to everything. And it says there is no meta-narrative. In other words, for me, I've got some things that are true. And those things might not be true for you, and that's okay. And for me, the purpose of life is this, and that might not be true for you, and that's okay, because you have your truth, and I have my truth, and we all have our own truth. It's kind of stuck in our own heads. We have our own way of doing things, and that's what's true. But if you take what's real, if you take reality, so let's take you out of the picture, and what's left all around you. That's reality. That's what's really real. Things as they actually are. So here's what's truth. Regardless of what you believe, there is a table right here. Okay? I don't care what you believe. It's right there. Now granted, that's my opinion. But quit being silly. There's a table right there.
Right.
You could say, but how do you know, Nate, that your hands that you're touching the table with are real? How do you know that your eyes that you see the table with are real? And I go, shut up. You can speculate about that kind of thing all day long, but in the end, it's philosophical, worthless time wasting.
Yes.
But it is. You can come up with a lot of different ways of wasting your time philosophically, and that's a really good one. But there's a table right here, okay? We're in a room. We have bodies. We are physical existences. We're breathing air. Whether you believe those things or not, those are actually part of reality. So I say Christianity is a revealed truth, or a revealed faith, because truth has been revealed to us through the Bible. What I mean by that is, God has given us the Bible as a way, like as a physical way of looking and reading about what reality is really like. Regardless of opinion, and there's a whole lot of opinions out there on a lot of different issues that the Bible covers. When you talk about morality, for instance, morality is a real big hot topic today. And not just today, but for the last 2, 3, 4, 5,000 years, on whose way of doing things is right. Is there even one right way of doing things? A lot of people would say no. It's called moral relativity. It's a big trademark of postmodernism. So the Bible says certain things are right and certain things are wrong. You shouldn't murder, period. In reality, the truth is that is a bad thing to do. It is wrong to do. And we don't have to guess at that in the Christian faith because the Bible tells us. We don't have to say, well, it might be a bad thing because of this reason, because the Bible clearly says it is wrong, period. Because God, who created the reality that you exist in, is telling you. So that's why Christianity, we have a basis for getting the truth from. It's been revealed to us, and that's why we can say with confidence, or I can say with what I consider a great amount of confidence, that Christianity is a reasonable faith. Because in order to reason, you have to have truth to start with, and truth to build with, and truth to make conclusions with. That's how to reason. And then obviously a mind with which to evaluate those things. We have those too. Because God created us with minds. Why? Because he wanted us to reason.
Yes.
To be able to figure things out. So truth is the way things really are, and God has revealed the way things really are to us through the Bible. And he gave us an incredible source, a really cool source, to see how things actually are. We don't have to guess, we don't have to flounder around. We don't have to spend millennia debating over whether this or that is right, at least in a lot of issues. I know some of you are thinking, okay, yeah, but Christians have spent millennia debating over this doctrine or that doctrine is right. That's true. But if you look at a lot of the macro issues, let's say morally, relationally, okay, adultery is wrong. You're not going to find a lot of Christians who would debate that one because it's pretty clearly stated in the Bible. Murder is wrong. You won't find a lot of Christians who would strongly disagree with you on that. lying, stealing, these sorts of things are pretty clearly stated in the Bible as wrong. So, yeah, you'd say, okay, we have doctrines that are debated, but if you zoom out a little bit, you're going to see that a lot of the big issues have been settled for a long time, thanks to the Bible, within Christianity. So not only in terms of morality, but when you look at God's character, for instance, God tells us what he's like. We don't have to guess what he's like. We don't have to base it off of subjective experience. We can say God is loving, because the Bible says so. And yeah, I've experienced that myself, so I can corroborate that. But the Bible gives us the basis to begin with. If my experience were to be in conflict with the Bible, you should start questioning your experience. It's the way it is. So God shows his character. He shows what he wants from us in the Bible. He gives us an idea of how we ought to live and why he created us and his purposes throughout history. His plan for redeeming us from the mess we've created for ourselves, and his plan to bring us back into a relationship with him. Furthermore, the Bible is full of teachings. Christ's teachings, Paul's teachings, teachings from a lot of different people, teachings that are all about how to live, how to have a relationship, how to be a good person, how to deal with your family or with your enemies or whatever else, how to live. So the Bible's full of this kind of stuff, and so it's a really good source of truth. And there's a whole nother thing we can talk about in terms of why should I believe that the Bible is a good source of truth. But for the sake of this discussion, pretend you've already had it settled in your mind, because it'll take us hours of that discussion going in a different direction, which we've already done actually multiple times in this class. And we will do again, because it's one of those topics that should be discussed often and that we should all have settled in our heads for whenever we have to answer that question ourselves. But that's the cool thing. We don't have to imagine. We don't have to guess or come up with different ideas of what God is like or different ideas of what is right and wrong, because the Bible tells us. So because of reasons like that and other reasons, I firmly believe that it is very important and, in brackets, essential for a Christian to be reading the Bible and to be reading it until they understand it.
Yes.
And what good would something like that be if we could not understand it? Interestingly enough, I have come into contact with people who strongly insist you cannot understand the Bible, which is really silly, in my opinion, because why else would it be here? Why do you write a book unless you want it to be read? Why do you express an opinion unless you want it to be understood? God isn't that arbitrary in the things that he does. So yeah, I believe that Christianity is a reasonable faith, and hopefully the things I just expressed are compelling evidence for that. Because it is reasonable, it's understandable. We can seek to understand it. And surely there are so many things to understand about God, about his ways, and so on and so forth, that none of us will even come close to breaking the surface in our lifetimes. But I plan to get as close as I can before I die. And then after I die, I want to keep on.
Yes.
Why not? So shouldn't we seek to understand that? If it's understandable, shouldn't we be seeking to understand it?
Yes.
So regardless of what your duty is as a Christian, let's talk the practical. When talking about understanding Christianity, understanding God's character, understanding what's right or what's wrong, or the Bible, or whatever else, when talking about that, what are some ways in which you could conceive that might be of some benefit to you in seeking understanding? What might that understanding benefit you personally?
It can bring comfort at times.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely something comforting about knowing that God has a bigger plan when things start going wrong.
I think having general knowledge of something kind of forces you in a certain direction. Like, if I knew there was a meteor headed straight for us, I'd run out of the building. Just like that, if I understood that life works a certain way, then I would be more inclined to live it that way.
Yeah, I think you're right. When you talk about responsibility for an action, the first requirement is having knowledge of the involved choice. In other words, You can't expect me to not, or to feel bad about stealing if I honestly didn't know that stealing is a wrong thing.
Right.
Make sense? Now, societally, it's a whole other thing in upholding the law. But let's say if you had a really delicate issue that you didn't want to talk about and that all your friends knew not to bring up around you. If you just met me on the side of the street, we have a conversation, and I happen to bring up that issue, would it be unreasonable of you to get really offended and angry with me as if, well, you shouldn't have done that, how dare you do that? Well, I just met you. I didn't have any knowledge of your problem. In other words, there's no responsibility on me to not mention that because I never knew that I shouldn't be mentioning that.
Right.
Having knowledge is the first requirement of moral responsibility.
Yes.
So on the flip side, the more knowledge you have, yeah, it gives you more responsibility, which is a scary thing. But having that greater knowledge gives you the ability to make better and better decisions.
Yes.
Like the example he gave. If I didn't know that there was a meteor heading towards me, well, you can't really blame me for not leaving and blowing up. But shouldn't you try to figure out if there is a meteor heading towards you so you can get out and not die? Having greater knowledge will keep you alive
Yeah.
in a lot of literal and non-literal ways. Spiritually and morally and so on and so forth. Relationally. There's a lot of things that men should understand about women and women should understand about men in order to have a successful relationship. You want to seek deeper understanding in order to work better in reality. So yeah, that's a good reason. Any other reasons why understanding or seeking understanding for the Bible and Christianity and God and so on and so forth would be of personal benefit to you?
Well, let me ask you this about responsibility. You know, under our laws in this country, that you're responsible. Ignorance of the law is not an excuse for breaking it. Now, does God look, I know you know that God looks, there's a certain expectation of knowledge just by looking at his creation, recognizing that there is a creator. I mean, I think that's a scripturally sound expectation, right?
Mm-hmm.
But wouldn't he go further? I mean, isn't there some responsibility on us recognizing a creator to begin to learn about him?
Yeah, there's an indefined amount of responsibility there between the conscience and between creation. We were talking about is Romans chapter 1,
Yes.
where it basically says, look, we're all born with some indefined amount of understanding of what is right and wrong.
Yes.
Kind of programmed into us by the way God created us. And then furthermore, by looking at creation, we can see it's a testimony that God exists and that we should seek him out. So there's responsibility there. As far as how much responsibility there, I don't know, you don't know, unless God told you. Maybe he did. Maybe it wasn't God. Maybe it's wrong. I don't know. That's why experience is a really vague thing, and it's hard to base your life opinions and presuppositions off of experiences. But yeah, there's some indefinable amount, well, indefinable for us right now, amount of responsibility there. I don't know how much it is. In terms of your example with ignorance of the law in this country, the reason for that is upholding the strength of the law for people who do know. Make sense? So if I saw some guy who just walked in from another country and, or I don't know, if you could conceive some situation in which somebody was raised in a basement and then broke free from the basement and committed some crime, that of course they would never have had an opportunity to learn that that was not a good thing to do. They would still have to be punished. In other words, the law would have to be upheld, because if you say, well, he honestly didn't know, even if it was true, you give a potential out to people who want to commit crimes knowingly, but could try to find some kind of like alibi or some kind of excuse. Like, well, look, I couldn't have been expected. And like, well, okay, I guess you can get free this time. Hey, that guy, he didn't know, and I really didn't know, I'm sorry. You have to maintain the strength of the law. So that's a whole thing where you're talking about the atonement of Jesus Christ. We've been talking about this with Galatians in terms of maintaining the strength of the law and why there had to be a sacrifice and why it had to happen the way it did and so on and so forth. That has to do with law and understanding the penalty and the principle and so on and so forth. But that's a whole other subject that I think we'll get closer and closer to as we go through Galatians here. But yes, I know there is no definite. Here's the answer to the question you have.
But there's some.
There has to be some.
Some.
Paul said it in
I
Romans.
mean, we can't just
There is
go
some.
around.
Exactly, yeah. But we just don't know how much it is.
Yeah.
It's vague. But by general principle, when you're looking at moral responsibility for a thing, understanding the thing itself and knowing the right and the wrong is the first part of having responsibility for the action.
Mhm.
Now, I mean, and once again, when you're talking about conscience, how much of that is there? How much of that can be deadened? I don't know. I have no idea. But that's, in terms of moral responsibility, this is William Blackstone stuff, John Locke, these guys. I highly recommend these old authors that our founding fathers based of our country and our law system on. But yeah, I think we come up with some good benefits that we gain for ourselves from understanding. But what about potentially being able to reach or help other people? Could understanding play a role in that as well?
Yeah.
In what way?
I think we need to, it's important for us to continue to seek and understand our own faith, especially if we're trying to reach others and explain to them, this is what I believe, this is how you would get to heaven, or this is just any example, or just, this is how it should go. And if you're interested, this is how I can help you find a way.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. Can you think of any examples in Scripture, for instance, in which understanding was used to help somebody come to a deeper knowledge of God?
Every parable Jesus ever used.
That's a pretty good example there.
Yeah,
We call parables,
yes.
because he understood a concept so incredibly well that he was able to phrase it in a way that would go around people's defenses
Yes,
and hit them right at the heart.
yes.
But yeah, you think a lot of his parables were directed at Pharisees, who were the hyper-legalistic version of today's pastors for the Jews back then. So he directed a lot of parables at them. But there were Pharisees who came to God. There were Pharisees who came to follow Jesus Christ.
Yes.
And then, by extension, came to a deeper revelation of who God was and how to follow him. So, yeah, Christ used a deep understanding to explain to people why they were in the wrong and where they should be going. Absolutely. If you look at the New Testament Christians, after Christ is gone, the people who are left behind and who spread Christ's name all over the world, as it is now, they reasoned with people around them. So off the top of your head, any examples you can think of?
Let's see here. Well, Paul, when he was talking to all those philosophers and stuff on Mars Hill, he really tried to reason with them and showed them where their faith was, but if they just brought it over here, it would be really meaningful. There's truth.
Yeah. Yeah, Paul went to Athens
Yes.
to spread the word of Christ there for the first time. No other Christian had been that far in evangelizing. And he went up to the Areopagus, Mars Hill, the place where they brought their philosophers of the day, because in Athens they were really big on philosophies and debating and discussing. And so they brought him up there to present his new philosophy, his new worldview to them. And he played by their rules. He didn't sit there and say, repent or God is going to throw you to hell. You better do what's right. And they're all like, whatever, man, like you so often have today. That's not what he did. He played by their rules. He said, I'm going to present to you a new philosophy. And this one is deeper than all the other ones you've had before. And as I was walking up here, I saw an altar to the unnamed God, and now I want to proclaim to you who that unnamed God is. He played by their rules and reasoned with them from point A to point Z to convince them that this was the right worldview. And that is something that is extremely lost on many Christians today. You say, well, the gospel should be offensive. We should be offending people, and the ones that aren't offended, they'll make their way here. And yes, the gospel is offensive because it goes against the way the world works. The ways of Christ and the way of God is not the way of the world. So in that sense, it is extremely offensive. But if you look at the guys who caused the Christian boom, because this is what it's considered when you look at world history, the boom of Christianity. Because it went from 120 people after Christ left to 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, hundreds of thousands, and now roughly 1 billion people claim to be Christian. Now, in terms of qualifying what a Christian is and actively living out Christian life, who knows? I have no idea. But that's a massive number, from 120 to that. So these guys who caused the Christian boom, they reasoned. Even if you look at right at the beginning, when Christianity got really, really big, right at the beginning of Acts chapter 2, on the day of Pentecost, you had 120 Christians and all of these Jews that had crowded into Jerusalem for the festival of Pentecost. And Peter stood before them, and he went back to the Jewish Old Testament, and he said, the Messiah that the Old Testament spoke of, I'm going to proclaim to you who that was. And he reasoned with them, using Scripture to show them why Jesus Christ was the fulfillment of the Old Testament prophecies. And the result of that was 3,000 people became Christ followers in one day. It went from 120 to 3,000 and continued exponential growth past that point, starting in Jerusalem and then blowing up to the entirety of the world. He reasoned with them. He didn't say, I'm going to tell you right now, that's, he didn't yell at them or scream at them and like, whatever, man. And some of them were, there was no hellfire, brimstone, street evangelism with Peter. Now, there isn't necessarily a place and a time for that sort of thing, given the state of a person's will or where they're at in their lives. But the majority of what you see in the Bible is reasoning. People reasoning with each other and showing them why this is right, why this is better, why this is the way to go. You look at Acts chapter 7, when you had the first martyr in the Bible, Stephen. He was sitting before the Jerusalem council, sitting before the council of the Jews. The name is escaping me right now for some reason.
Starts with an S, right?
Wait a minute.
It's gone. Whatever. This is really going to bother me. Thank you.
Yeah.
He's before the Sanhedrin. So aren't you glad you were in Acts week?
Yeah.
He was before the Sanhedrin, and he reasoned with them. Once again, he went back to the Old Testament, because that's what the Jews were all about, and he showed them why Jesus Christ, like, you've continued to turn away, and he was very accusative, very accusatory, very much you need to turn, and very much repentance-driven, but the whole thing was reasoning. Like, look, I'm going to show you why you're in the wrong, and now you need to turn. That's what Stephen did. You look at, we brought up Paul, but at one point, Paul went to a place called Lystra, which is full of pagans who worship many, many, many gods. And Paul and the people with him began to do miracles and healings. And Paul and someone with him healed a crippled man. And all the people there were familiar with the supernatural, but they were attributed to all these other pagan gods. And they thought Paul and his friend with him were the incarnations of pagan gods. And they started worshiping Paul and his friend. And you say, oh, wow, this place is, too bad. No, what Paul did was led them further than that. He said, look, I know what you believe, but we are not gods. But we're coming and representing a God who's so incredibly greater than these gods. And he took them from that point and reasoned with them to show them why what they're doing, as they just saw, is something that's real and meaningful and worth putting your life towards. That's cool, and this is what Paul constantly did. He constantly reasoned with people. Governor Felix, Governor Festus, King Agrippa, the people who he got to in Rome. He reasoned with them to show them why Christianity is the way to go, that Jesus Christ is who he said he was. And so likewise, you are going to come in contact with people who have questions. And we are in an age of questioning. Everybody from age 10 and up is questioning what life is all about. It's ridiculous, especially with the internet now, because people have access to all kinds of terrible opinions. And there are a whole lot of questions out there, questions about God's existence and questions about the Bible's authority and what is right and what is wrong and what the purpose of life is and so on and so forth. There's all kinds of questions that we're going to come in contact with. And what are we supposed to do? How are we supposed to respond when we come in contact with a question like that? Have you ever come in contact with a question like that? Someone who has questions, hard questions. What do you do?
Respond with love, and of course, and the knowledge that you have.
What should our role be as Christians when people come to us and they have questions about the big questions? Life and existence and meaning and morality and God. When people come to us with those kind of questions, what should our role be?
To point them in the right direction towards the Lord.
Yeah.
However way that might be at that moment.
Shouldn't we be the ones with the answers?
Sometimes.
As often as we can.
Yes.
And so if someone comes to me, if I've had the opportunity to learn the answers, and someone comes to me and they need the answers, who's responsible for the fact that I can't give them the answers they need? Me. That's sobering, but it's true.
Yes.
So I have, and I say this because I've been in this situation many times. Because I don't know enough.
Yes.
Now, look, time out. It's not all on me. It's not all on us. There's a God and a Holy Spirit who's a lot bigger and more powerful than us. But the way He's set up the world, there's a huge amount of reliance on us.
Yes.
Yeah, God could sweep in and just like, here I am if He wanted to. But that's not what He wants to do. We are His hands and His feet on earth. You realize that?
Yeah.
And so, whose fault is it if we don't know what we're doing? Whose fault is it? It's our fault. I don't get it. When I was in Bible school, there was a guy who was in the Bible school who said we shouldn't be studying the Bible. The Holy Spirit will tell us everything we need to know in the moment. We don't have to do anything. Now, there are times when the Holy Spirit will come and fill in the gaps.
Yes.
That's what the Holy Spirit's for.
Yes.
But that doesn't give us a license to sit on our butts and not know the things that we should know. Not know. If someone says, what is life all about? The Christian should be able to give the best answer. Because the Christian should be the one with the right answer, right?
And living it.
And living it. If someone comes to the Christian and says, what is God? Who is God? What is He like? Who should be able to give the best answer? The Christian.
Yeah.
Yeah, the majority of Christians, the majority of people who claim to, or who would put on paper, I am a Christian, will have either no answer or a very poor answer for the really big questions in life. A lot of Christians wouldn't even be able to say, okay, what is the meaning of life? A lot of them would say, getting into heaven. But if you look at Jesus Christ, that wasn't His answer. That objectively was not His answer. So, this got heavy quick, but sorry. When we run into things that I'm passionate about, I get more passionate. That's what happens. So, bottom line, we must reason, okay? Christianity is reasonable, it's revealed, we have the truth, and we have the way to get the truth and learn the truth and figure out the big questions. And so we have to be able and willing to reason with people. Peter said this, he called Christians to do this. He said, always be prepared to provide a defense for the hope that is within you. In other words, you've got a hope within you because you're a Christian. You've got a hope because of the person of Jesus Christ and relationship with your God. So when somebody comes to you and says, what's up with that? Always be prepared to provide a defense for that. Not defending yourself, but provide an explanation that is going to lead somebody in the right direction.
Yes.
That word there in Greek for defense is apollovia. Apollovia, which is where we get the English word apologetics, which is how to defend Christianity, but not defend in the sense of like, I'm defending. Someone once said, apologetics to me is a waste of time. What are we apologizing for exactly? But it's the Greek word apollovia, which means towards the defense. We're providing a defense when people say, once again, not in a get away from me kind of way, but in a, hey, you shouldn't have that hope, you're wasting your time, this is why, and this is why, and this is why Christianity's whack. We should be able to answer those kind of questions. According to Peter, at least. However, Paul added something in 2 Timothy to that idea that we should all keep in our heads in the way that we answer those kind of questions. He said this, the Lord's bondservant, that's us, must not be quarrelsome, but be kind to all, able to teach, patient when wrong, with gentleness, correcting those who are in opposition. And that's key. That's 2 Timothy chapter 2, verse 24, by the way. That's key to everything that we do in dealing with people who are not Christians. That should be our modum operandi. Modus operandi. Getting my Latin messed up here. Being kind to all, able to teach, correcting those who are in opposition with gentleness. And so when someone comes to you with a question, or when you get involved in a Facebook debate, or when you're in Starbucks and someone sees you reading the Bible and they're asking you about it, you need to be able to answer the questions. Or you need to be currently trying to learn enough to be able to answer those kind of questions so that you can be a light to those people. And you need to do it in a way in which you're correcting with gentleness and love. And all of your concern is not on, I'm going to take you down right now. I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm going to make you look so stupid with your stupid, Buddhist or atheist or whatever views might be attacking you. The whole idea is to get them closer to God.
Yes.
Okay, that's the whole idea.
Yeah, we have
And
to check our motives.
we got to check our motives, man, because it is really, really easy for pride to get mixed up in there and go, you know what? I've been going to a class. I'm going to take you down. You know what? I've got just the verse for you, buddy.
Yeah.
We do this with other Christians too. And
Yeah.
it's really sad. I saw somebody online, not just somebody, like 6,000 somebodies in mob think, trash talking somebody named, megachurch pastor, Dallas, Texas, Joel Osteen.
Okay.
They were trash talking. It was like, this guy is probably the Antichrist. This guy is destroying Christianity. This guy is the scum of the earth. This guy should be strung up and killed. This guy should be drugged. Just like the most vile things I'm reading through 6,000 comments, just shocked. Okay. Now here's the thing: you line up my views with Joel Osteen's, you're going to find some serious discrepancies. You line up the way I would do things with Joel Osteen's, you're going to find some serious discrepancies. But that gives me, first of all, let's say hypothetically that everything this guy was doing is wrong and terrible. First of all, it's not. You look at what he's doing, his ministry has had a serious effect. People are being fed. Homeless are being clothed because of the ministry of that church, okay? Regardless of what you believe about the guy, that's true. I absolutely don't even come close to agree with everything the guy believes, but that's true. Even if he was the devil, even if he was the closest servant of the devil himself, okay? It doesn't give us the right to treat him like that. It doesn't, okay? It doesn't. Our goal in correcting opposition, and Joel Osteen is not the opposition, by the way. The goal in correcting opposition is bringing them closer to where God is, okay? And it's just really sad how, whether it's an atheist or whether it's a Christian who disagrees with you, but Christianity has become, in many areas, a toxic environment. And it stinks. Sometimes it's the church down the road. You go, those guys, you know what they believe? Oh, idiots. That's so sad. Christ would never come close to anything like that. And so that verse right there is a guideline for how this class should look. Okay? Because at times, every time, we're often going to be looking at things that we disagree with. I've probably said things already that you disagree with. That's okay. It's okay. If you look at Paul and Peter and John and James and other James and all these guys who made up the core of the church, Timothy and Apollos and all these guys in the early church that were these great teachers, they did not have the same way of doing things. They didn't. Right at the beginning of the church, they did not have the same way of doing things. And they fought. They quarreled at times. But they would always... there's a deeper level of unity. That makes sense. That we always need to be aiming for and having, okay? What I'm saying is, feel free to disagree with me. I encourage that, especially when I'm wrong, because I am wrong sometimes, more often than I'd like to be. And so at times we'll be looking at things that are controversial, where there's a lot of different opinions, as we're trying to go deeper in our understanding of God, but like Paul says, we cannot allow ourselves to be quarrelsome with a spirit of pride or toxicity or anything like that. That can never come close to our motives. Or we've so far missed the point of doing this kind of thing. But being kind to all and being able to teach and being patient with each other and being gentle towards one another. So, really quickly, for those of you, I share these semi-often, but there are a few guidelines for what this class is. If you plan to be here ever again, or if you don't plan to be here ever again, these will be useful for you in learning in any environment. But these are the guidelines for the class as we begin to wrap up. We spent a long time on introductory stuff, but honestly, every 4 months or so, I like to do this because it's so important to be reminded of why we're doing what we're doing and to get grounded again back at ground zero. So, number one, everything we do here has to be done in love. It's like Paul said. Everything, whether it's asking a question or debating with someone across the class who has a different opinion than you, or whatever it is, has to be done in love. I should have mentioned this earlier, but I really like questions and observations and raising your hand and saying, hey, here's what I think about that, or whatever. I love that stuff, but please do it in love, whatever you do. Secondly, we're, like we just said, we're not here to argue. We're not here to fight. If you decide that you want to be argumentative, you're just going to take away from the experience from everyone else who's in the class but you, and maybe like the 2 other people who are interested in the argument. But I once had, one of the best teachers I've ever heard in my life is a guy named Alnick Bryan. And I had him for 1 week in a Bible school, and he was teaching on all kinds of incredibly difficult questions. And there was an older gentleman in the school who had been through seminaries and various other things. He was a pastor. And he was going through as like a sabbatical, going through a school again. And this guy, for a week straight, argued and fought and was derisive and mocking. And we had 32 other people in the class, aside from him, who wanted to hear what the teacher had to say. Even if we didn't agree with it, we wanted to hear it and be thinking. And all we heard was this guy arguing while the teacher was lovingly answering questions as the guy was throwing them at him. And it stunk. It was awful. So please don't be that older pastor who's been through seminary and really wants to prove himself right. Please don't be that. If you really want to fight me, just wait until outside class and I'll gladly fight you. But feel free to ask questions about whatever, but please save fights for afterwards. And, I don't want to physically fight you, but I can take you down. I don't want to, if you really want to debate, if you really want to argue, we can argue afterwards. I'm not going to argue, but you can argue at me afterwards if you want, but please wait just until after everyone else is gone. Third, please don't monologue. Just as bad as a guy who wants to argue the whole time is another guy who wants to raise his hand to ask a question, and 30 minutes later you're like, oh, well, there goes the class. Because this guy wanted to monologue about his life or his experiences or his opinions the whole time. People came here to learn a particular topic, not to hear you monologue. I guarantee John didn't come here to hear Elijah monologue. So quit monologuing, Elijah. Also, sometimes there'll be cases in which you'll ask a question, and sometimes we'll have to cut the discussion short in order to move back to the material, because it's really, really easy to get into rabbit trails.
Yeah.
I taught in the Bible school for a couple of years, and right at the beginning of the school, you'd be discussing something like the character of God, like basics as you're building or putting building blocks up to go to more difficult content or topics. And the students will always be like, wait a minute, what about this thing? And you're like, that'll be 8 months from now. And they're like, what? No, tell us now. And sometimes there's an order for things. Which is why, like, those of you who've been here multiple times, you're like, yeah, Nate's mentioned the atonement for like 4 months straight. We haven't talked about it yet. Yeah. To be fair, it's usually the atonement in the Bible school. Right at the first couple of weeks, someone's like, why did you just die on the cross? And you're like, okay, that'll be right at the end of the year.
Yeah.
You'll hold tight. Number 4, please don't be disruptive. If you get a phone call, please take it outside. Please don't talk loudly or be laughing to yourself or like mumbling, or just don't be disruptive. Please feel free to leave to do whatever you need to do. Just be considerate to the people around you. We're almost done here. 5, please respect whoever has the floor. Usually that'll be me because I'm teaching the class. But if someone else is asking a question, don't talk over them. If I'm talking, don't talk over me. That's why we have hand raising. If I'm saying something and you want to add something, raise your hand. If someone else is saying something and you want to add something, raise your hand. Just don't talk over people. Respect whoever has the floor. Finally, as we wrap up, and here's my favorite thing to talk about. People are outside. Lastly, as we wrap up here, and here's a good life lesson in general, okay? That word, despite what that looks like, it's an R. That word is Berean. Berean. And the last guideline is be Berean. Be Berean in your learning and in your efforts. On Paul's second missionary journey, he went to Macedonia, which nobody had brought the gospel to Macedonia. It was far away. And as he was traveling, he went to a place called Thessalonica, which is where 1st and 2nd Thessalonians are written to. And the Jews there were a bunch of jerks. They refused to hear anything Paul had to say. They finally got really angry that Paul disagreed with their opinions, and they grabbed him and they drug him outside of the city and they beat him until he was no longer moving, and they thought he was dead. And then they left him to die, and so then Paul stood up and walked back into the city, and he was fine. So Thessalonica was bad. He had to flee the city, and he went to another place called Berea. And in Berea it says that the Bereans were more noble than the Jews in Thessalonica because they heard what Paul had to say, and it wasn't what they believed, but they considered it, and they thought about it, and they said, okay, we're going to hear what you have to say, and we're going to study the scriptures daily. It says they diligently looked through the scriptures to see if what he said was accurate. So in other words, they weren't wrapped up in their own pride. They weren't saying, no, I don't agree with that, so I'm not going to even listen to it. They said, I'm going to hear what you have to say, and then I'm going to do a lot of thinking and a lot of searching the scripture and trying to figure out if that's accurate. And as a result of them doing that, a huge amount of them came to Christ. This is Acts chapter 18, right around there, 17, 18. Bottom line, please be Berean in what you do in here and what you do out there. And whenever you hear some guy on Facebook rattling off about some opinion you don't believe in, be Berean. In other words, hear it and be willing to think about it and evaluate it instead of just throwing up a wall saying, no, I don't believe that. On the flip side, don't just hear what I have to say or what anyone else has to say and say, well, now that's my opinion because I respect so-and-so and so-and-so said it, therefore I'm going to believe it. Critically, lovingly, and critically evaluate carefully everything you're hearing. And pray and think and read the Bible until you figure out if that's accurate or not. That particular teacher I mentioned before, this guy Abbot Brian, he used to say that. He said, if you walk out of here and everything I've said is now your opinion, you have done something seriously wrong. And likewise, if you walk out of here and you have refused to believe anything I say on principle, you've also done something extremely wrong. I want you to hear what I'm saying, and I want you to listen and think about it carefully. And if in the end you reject what I'm saying, if you've done it in a spirit, in a Berean spirit, then I'm happy. So that is the last guideline. Any questions about what we've talked about or the class? I know this has all been very big picture and everything. And for those of you who've been here a lot, I'm sorry if this was very redundant for you. But any questions?
Do you have like a schedule of what you plan to talk about so that we might be able to read ahead?
Yes,
You know?
I do. We're in Galatians right now.
Okay.
And what we've done is we did a few weeks of preliminary work in talking about some of the background around the book. And we have gone through the first 3 chapters of the 6-chapter book. What we'll be doing next week when we pick up, next Wednesday, is I'm going to do a brief recap, because it will have been a few weeks before we've been in Galatians. And then for those of you who have missed all of it, a brief recap of the background and some of the context, and then quickly going through the first 3 chapters, just kind of breezing through just to see what Paul was saying in that. And then we'll be picking up in Galatians chapter 4. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because you're going to get so much more out of this if you read ahead and you think about it on your own and you start asking questions. Because Galatians is one of the most difficult epistles to read, to just pick up and read. It is. It was the first chronologically written epistle, which is why we started with that one a few months ago before we move on to any other ones. But you're going to get a lot more if you read the stuff on your own and you ask questions and you make observations and you come in here with those questions ready to share and the observations ready to share. And hopefully your questions will be answered and your observations will help someone else.
Yes.
So the answer to your question is Galatians chapter 4.
I kind of forgot where we left off the last time we actually had class. Are we going to be picking up, because I know we missed 2 weeks and you gave us some notes to study, which I didn't study, so I'm actually kind of glad we didn't talk about anything tonight. So are we going to be picking up where the notes ended or where the last class ended?
We're going to be picking up midway through chapter 3. And I'm going to kind of skim through it because we've been stuck on this one general point for a little while now, and a lot of it is reiterating. And so, for those of you who have the notes, read over the notes, and I'll reiterate what those say. And we'll be picking up with totally new stuff in chapter 4 next week, once we do the recap.
Cool.
Yeah. Any other questions before we're done? Okay. All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Nate.
We'll be right back.